do we have here? We have a
Oh,
game.
how the
5.
turntables.
Woo! Who would have saw this coming?
I sure as hell didn't. I'll be totally honest. Part of the reason I didn't go to the game on Wednesday because I was like, I feel like crap. I've been to 2 postseason ending losses in the past of my 6 postseason losses, Cubs losses I have attended. And I remembered how that felt, leaving those games and knowing that I would have had to drive home afterwards, get home at like midnight or later, depending on traffic and whatnot. I was like, you know what? I don't want to do it. And then I wore it for the team, knowing that when I go, they lose. So I'm like, you know what? And I swear, like I was sitting at home on Wednesday and they're winning and they're scoring, and my wife's like, you could have been there. I said, if I was there, they would have lost. Like I repeated, like I firmly believe that at this point, that as much as the fans in attendance were huge, the 42,000 on their feet, it was the one.
It was you
sitting on his ass on the porch last night that got it done. So you're welcome, Cubs. You're welcome, Craig Counsell, for writing that you need to score more late in the game and steal bases. You're welcome.
Yes. And Kyle here says he hears that Ben Brown has aggravated his neck and needs the IL. Boy, wouldn't that be interesting? I know we talked about, I don't think that's true, but when we talked about, in the last episode, who was going to pitch in game 5, which we'll obviously deeply get into here in a few minutes. We talked about the possibility of Cade Horton coming back. And you mentioned, which is the correct assessment, that somebody would have to go on the IL in order for Cade Horton to be able to be on the roster for the game. And so we are waiting to see what happens there, to see what the starting pitcher options are. And I guess we can get into it right now, but it's, I looked back at, I went all the way back to July 23rd and compared Colin Ray and Shota Imanaga. And as you can guess, and I'm sure you know, but we'll tell all the people that are listening, is Imanaga has been substantially worse. Do you know over that time frame, Colin Ray has given up 1 home run. Imanaga has given up 23 home runs or so? How many home runs? Where did I write that down? I don't know. It's 20, a lot.
23 home runs. 23 in his last 14 games. In 14 games.
home runs.
14 games.
Against 1 for Colin Ray. I mean, that's the only stat I need right there. But, I mean, you can break down a lot more stats. I mean, and the innings pitched. I mean, Imanaga's pitched, 76 and a third innings. Colin Ray's 57 and a third. I mean, so obviously he's got more in his arm, so to speak. He's just been so much better obviously in the postseason, Colin Ray has been great, giving up no earned runs. Imanaga has given up, a whole lot of runs. His ERA since July 23rd is 5.42 versus Ray, who has a 3.14 ERA over that time frame. I mean, there's really no way to look at it that I can come up with to justify starting Shota Imanaga in game 5. Anyway, either you go for Colin Ray, which seems like the obvious start, and combine that with a bullpen game, right? I mean, that's kind of like a bullpen game, so to speak.
Aaron Savali is another one. Savali looked really good in last Saturday, right? He had to come in and it looked like he might have to wear it, but he went like 4.1 innings, right? He kind of had to come in there and do the heavy lifting in that game after the Cubs just crapped themselves right out of the gate. But those two, I mean, you're looking at like almost 8 scoreless innings in this series, and Ray had a scoreless inning against the Padres as well, right? So, when you combine that, his last 2 starts, I think we talked about this back on Monday or, whenever we had our last show, we're talking about going with the hot hand, right? And Colin Ray, last 2 starts were 2 of his best of the season, if not the one of them he had the 11 strikeouts. That might have been the best start of his career. He followed that up with, I think, what did he have, 7 strikeouts in his next start. Didn't give up any runs in that one. He only gave up 1 in that. So he lost to the Reds 1-0. He struck out 11, gave up 1 run, and took the loss because Hunter Green had a complete game shutout against the Cubs, and that, you know, when they were playing like crap against the Reds there. And so, you know, I like at this point, like whoever it is, it's more just don't let it be Imanaga. Like
yeah, I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
He's in his head a little bit. Like he wore the loss last. He was like, I disappointed everybody. I lost, you know. And I'm like, maybe don't keep sending him out there. Like Matt Boyd going at Wrigley, different deal, right? With that crowd, with everything else. I don't know.
And full rest.
Yeah, and full rest, and that was huge. And you could tell, right? Like he's normally a big time strike thrower, and the Brewers took advantage of that in the first game. And maybe it was just dumb luck, but it very much looked like he was doing everything possible to avoid the middle of the zone, right? He had 3 walks, but it's like, hey, that's fine. Like put dudes on base if you have to, but don't let them hit the ball over the fence, right? Like keep the ball in the yard, keep it. And that's what it looked like he was doing. He was mixing pitches a little bit differently, going backwards sometimes with that curveball early, but very much not even trying to get chase so much as he was just, I'm just not going to let them barrel it. That's the problem we've seen with Imanaga is the dude has, you know, we talk all we want, all these people, oh, the Brewers are stealing signs, which is perfectly legal as long as you're not using, you know, electronic devices and stuff and binoculars. But whatever, the pitch comm is supposed to eliminate the ability for a guy on second base, you know, so unless it's the way he's setting up, if they're looking into his glove. But here's the thing, none of it matters. If you're executing your pitches, they're not going to be just hitting everything over the wall. But the problem is he's throwing nothing but dick balls over and over and over again. So it's like you put it in the middle of the plate every time. These are professional hitters who do well against lefties, by the way. I know I brought that up and I'm being redundant. But I've seen nothing from Imanaga to suggest, even in the games that he's pitched well on the whole, he's given up a bunch of homers. And with a team like the Brewers that does a really good job, that normally doesn't have a whole lot of power, right? That's not usually part of their game, but they get on base well. They get a bunch of hits. They're aggressive on the base paths. And we saw how much damage that can bring when you have guys on, and then you're giving up home runs in a hitter-friendly ballpark. So to me, if it's not Ray and or Savali, I mean, it's basically, it's going to be all hands on deck anyway, right? Regardless. But, you know, hey, were they going down to the clubhouse and maybe Craig Counsell tripped Ben Brown, you know, to tweak his ankle or something? Did he shove him off the curb? I don't know. Did Michael Soroka come up with a tweak? You know, maybe Brown went to open the door and felt a twinge in his shoulder. That's the only thing, because in addition to, if you know, you can remove him for injury, right? Replace and remove. So Horton could technically be activated for Game 5, but the pitcher or any player, but obviously it would be a pitcher who you remove due to injury is then ineligible for the entire next series. But when you have Javier Assad
and Brown, doesn't matter though.
Yeah,
honestly,
man, like you've got another replacement. But Brown, if Horton is activated, Brown becomes irrelevant. So, you know, do they go that route? Something tells me they won't, because it feels, and then I made the joke too, that it's like, well, even if somebody was injured, it would take them 5 days to actually recognize it and put them on the IL. They'd have to get 15-second opinions and then, and then wait till it's too late to actually make the move, which is kind of how that would go. But I would love, like, you want to talk about an emotional lift, like the Willis Reed, and that's what I wrote about on Tuesday, about how unlikely it was, because on Tuesday, as I was writing it, they're still in an 0-2 hole, and he had yet to even throw that bullpen. He said he felt fine. I don't know, man. I mean, I'm assuming they'll just give him a cortisone injection in that rib, you know, as long as he can't hurt it worse. Give him a pain-killing shot so he doesn't feel it. And if you could roll him out there, I mean, that would just be a massive, massive emotional lift. Psychological, I mean, just all things considered, right? Like all that stuff. So while it would be much, much better for the Cubs, I'm skeptical of that. But who did we just see? The Dodgers did it, although that's, you know, they wouldn't have necessarily wanted to, but they had to put what's his nuts, the lefty reliever, on the IL and call a guy up. That just happened yesterday. So it's far from unprecedented, but that's a slightly different situation, right? This would be like the flip side. Like they got rid of one of their better relievers because he was hurt and had to move in a different direction. But man,
yeah,
a boy can dream, right? We still got a little bit of time before we got to figure that out.
Well, I mean, here's the thing is, they're talking about it. I mean, whether they do it or not, that Jed Hoyer, Craig Counsell, and team are sitting there this morning, talking about what it would take to bring Horton back, what the optics of that would be, and how much people would look at that and maybe, kind of like tilt their head. And then what would the options be? Like, would there be any penalties or I don't think so. But they're having those conversations, right? Like it'd be nice to be a fly on the wall there to really hear what's being said in that room.
And that's where, right. So the tricky part, and this has to do with like any, because people, it's not completely mythical, but a lot of people like to think of the phantom IL. They like to talk about that. Like, oh, somebody had a bad outing. Now he magically came up with an injury. If it's not a real injury, right? If it's not something that's obvious, if the guy can still play through it, whether that be, we talk about Kyle Tucker's hand earlier, and people are like, well, why didn't he go on the IL? Well, the thing is, when he broke his hand, he had his best month of the season. Like right after it was broken, he was playing. So they can't just say you're going on the IL, because if he can still play, he could file a grievance if they place him on the IL without an injury, without a true injury that's actually hampering his play. And I'm trying to remember who. I think was it John Birdie? Remember how? No, not Birdie. That was this season. There was a guy. I'll have to figure this out. There was a guy a few years ago, right? Kind of utility guy the Cubs signed, who then ended up hardly ever playing. He was terrible, and there were some issues there with the IL. But a player could file a grievance, right? If the team is like, hey, we're going to put you on the IL. Well, I'm not hurt. Well, we need the spot, right? That could come back to bite them. However, you kind of wonder, like, are they having that situation? Like, okay, here's the deal, Ben. You've already you've been on the taxi squad for the first one. You're on the roster here. Like, you've got your playoff share. Like, you're good. But with the way you've been performing and the way everybody else has, your only role moving forward will be to serve in mop-up duty. So the only way you're going in the game is if we're up or down by 8 runs.
I saw him up in the bullpen last night, and I almost choked. I was like, God, dear Lord, I know it's a 6-run game, but please don't put him in.
Exactly, right? And that's the thing. And it's like, okay, so we either have your spot as the mop-up last-ditch reliever, or we have our ace starter who we can bring back for this game. Are you comfortable taking one for the team in this situation, Ben? And he's like, hell yeah. My arm felt funny when I opened the door, so I better go get that checked. I'm cool. Then they could do it, right? I mean, something along those lines. But, again, it's the more I talk about it, though, the more I'm sitting here saying, like, they have to figure out a way to make this happen. Because of all the available options, and of what we know for certain is available, to me, the obvious choice is Colin Ray. However, the obvious choice for me to pitch in game 2 of the Padres series was Colin Ray. And the obvious choice for me to pitch game 1 of the Brewers series, so you could have bumped Matt Boyd back and given him regular rest, was Colin Ray. So I keep thinking they're going to use him in these situations. And yet they continue to see fit to go. Like, how many people raise your hands if you thought Imanaga was a good idea to start game 2 of this series? Nope, nobody. I don't see any hands out there. So, like that, but that hasn't stopped Counsell at any point in the recent past. I don't know if I have faith in it.
Sense. It's like, does Imanaga's camp have something on Craig Counsell? I mean, this is a guy who, as I was saying, going back to July 23rd, has given up a home run in every game, and in many of those games, multiple home runs. So that's over 14 games. In 13 of them, he has given up a home run or more in those games. And Colin Ray, over 13 games from the same time period, has given up 1 home run.
Right.
That means in one of the 12, it's the exact opposite.
Right.
And so it's kind of like, it feels like I don't know. It's just like destiny is being served to us on a platter if Imanaga comes out there and starts in the game.
Yeah. And who, right. Like there's always at some point, people do tend to right the ship. Although, when we look at stuff like that, we're not talking about, oh, hey, in his last 3 games, in his last 4 games, we're talking about 2 full months of performance, at which point we stop saying, oh, this is bad luck, right? Or there's just, and again, like I said
and that's
earlier,
the point is the sample size is big enough.
It's quite large. And, I also look at little things. I talked about this. It was on a different show. My buddy Sean Sierra, who's got his show, was on there a couple times last week. And that's when I had noted at the time going into this series, Ray and Savali, both former Brewers, right? Savali in particular has got a chip on his shoulder about that because that's when he got bumped from Mizrowski and then he wanted to get a trade. Then they traded him to the White Sox. Now he's back. And so there's the revenge angle but there's also being familiar with the park. And it's not huge. We're not talking about, oh, this is the difference between winning and losing all on its own. But, Ray pitched there for a while as well. The way the park plays. Some of the tendencies of these hitters who were on the team when you were. There are these little – so when we're talking about a Game 5, do or die, win or go home, there's so many little things you can leverage, right? In addition, there's always the big stuff. Like the pitchers have to perform well, the hitters have to hit. But if you can find that little, whether it's a mental edge or something psychological or a bit of knowledge that you have about this certain guy, I think those things can help. And having guys who are more familiar with this team. I mean, again, Savali was literally on the team this year. Ray was there last year. They know a lot of these guys. That to me says go with it. And then have you've got plenty of dudes. Like those two can both go bulk. You have other guys back there. Imanaga could come in if he has to relieve. He's, been familiar with it. And he looked good against the Padres until they left him in too long, which again says to me that Counsell has way too much trust in some of these guys versus others. It's like, you got to be on the top. If he does pitch at all, you got to be on the top step of that dugout. And it's like, oh, got a righty coming. You're done. Like, you're not facing anybody twice. If you can get some left-on-left matchups and use him in relief for that, I'd be cool. But at the end of the day, to me, it's still, I just keep going back to it. If they know how to do it, like Cade Horton, Cade Horton is, I mean, that is just sitting there for you, right? Like that's the best, because the thing is, he could say, I'm absolutely going to be ready for the NLCS. But guess what? You can't be ready for a series you don't play
in NLCS,
right? Like
for the Cubs.
You've got to go, and that's why, and this is what was funny too, is before last, like yesterday, before they'd announced any starter shit, I was like, okay, it's going to be Boyd versus Peralta, right? And it was like, well, if it was Peralta, they would have already said it. I'm like, dude, this is all about gamesmanship. Like, it's got to be Peralta, because you can't, and it didn't work out for them, but you can't just sit there and hold your best starter for the 5th game. Like, you've got to win. If you're the Brewers, you don't want to let it go to Game 5. And so that's what Pat Murphy did. He rolled with Freddie Peralta, and it said at the time, he was like, we want him to be able to throw 2 games in the next series. And that's not a matter of, so a lot of people say, well, oh, you're looking ahead. And he is, but it's just like at the end of the regular season was setting up for that series. You have to have your best players available the most often. And so not only would bumping Freddie Peralta to Game 5 have maybe it would have been the same result, right? Because the Cubs did get to him early and often there, but you've got to win the game that is in front of you before you can think about the next one. And I get it, right? It'd be great if they do make it without Horton. It'd be awesome to have him be able to go Game 1 in the championship series if they should reach that. But at the same time, and I don't know how many days there are between, but he could go in this one and then get him a game 2 or 3 start, right, and move him back that way. So I just, if he's available, if they can make it work, and I'm being so redundant, and I apologize to everybody here, but if they can make it work, that to me is like options A, B, C, and D, and then Colin Ray would be option E.
You do anything you possibly can to make sure that it works, meaning that Imanaga does not pitch in this game. I'm sorry. It's a game 5, decisive game. The Cubs win this game. They go to the NLCS. This is way too big to ignore all the obvious facts that we've been ignoring, that Craig Counsell has been ignoring up to this
we
point.
haven't been ignoring them.
Yeah, we haven't been, right.
I think there's only one person on the planet that's been ignoring them.
Or 2. Yep. But you cannot go into this game with Shota Imanaga as the starter. And if you do, you are giving fate. You're serving it up on a golden platter to the Milwaukee Brewers. They're licking their chops. They know what's coming. It's just, and the thing is that if the Cubs activate Horton, I mean, think about how big of a distraction that is for the Brewers.
Yeah.
Because here you're going to have an entire fan base that's going to whine about the Cubs cheating. You're going to have an entire team that probably feels the same way. Then they're going to feel like they kind of want to have a chip on their shoulder, like they're going to come out and prove us wrong and prove Cade Horton wrong. And then they're going to be inside of and in front of the reality of that situation, which is having to take pitches from Cade Horton. And then it's going to settle in that, oh, shoot, no, this is not something that we're going to be able to just overcome with will and with anger and with all the things that they're going to be feeling. And so it's like all that whole situation that creates. Meanwhile, the Cubs would be feeling comfortable. They've got their ace coming up on the hill. Maybe they're dealing with some chatter here and there, but not really. You know, it create the situation alone that it creates in the dome of the Brewers is something that I just love.
Well, and even if we take the Horton part out of the equation, right? The Cubs have all the momentum, all of it. Like the Brewers rolled into Chicago on Wednesday, having blown the Cubs out twice, right? Cubs came in, Michael Busch hits a leadoff homer in game 1 that is immediately washed away by a terrible inning. Seiya Suzuki, 3-run homer in the first inning of game 2, immediately wiped away by a 3-run homer of their own by the Brewers, incidentally enough, given up by Shota Imanaga, right? And so they blew the Cubs' doors off those 2 games. They roll into Chicago, and it really felt there for all the world. Like the Cubs were trying to give it away. It's 4-3. They got bases loaded in the 8th. And then Brad Keller shuts down the 9th. Boom, now you go to the next one. The Cubs steamroll them right out of the gate. Now you're going, even though it's back to Milwaukee, this has all the – and it was funny to me. This is hilarious to me, one of the statements of the broadcast. They're like, the Cubs haven't won 3 win-or-die games in a row since the 2016 World Series. I'm like, you're acting like they've been in the position to do this multiple times. Right? It's like, I mean, it's a big deal. But, like, if you remember, I mean, you were there in Cleveland, but just the vibe around the place, like, that was very much like the Cubs fans were ecstatic about that. And going into the game, the Indians fans, now Guardians, but at the time still Indians, were distraught. They did not feel good at all about game 7. And so there was a lot more, and there was a pretty strong Cubs presence at 1 and 2 as well, right? But going back for 7 did not feel comfortable for them. And I would suspect we're going to see more of the same. You've got Brewers fans all over social media begging other Brewers fans not to sell their tickets on the secondary market because they know Cubs fans are going to come up and buy them well. And so this is a team, and they did show
there are tons of tickets available.
Right. And they are, but they're begging them. I'm like, you should not, if you're like, when do you see Cubs fans sitting there telling people not to resell their tickets to other fan base? Like, again, it's a little bit different, and I get it. Look, I don't want to complain about. I'm just looking at the comment. Sit down and
Block. Don't worry about that.
Okay, good.
It's gone forever.
Yeah, well, I was like, well, I am actually sitting down. But they're 90 miles away, right? Like, and so I get it. In a big game like that, if you're holding on to those tickets and you can get a huge payday for those things. Like, I don't begrudge anybody, depending on your financial situation, taking advantage of that. But like, by all means, if you're going to do it, find somebody locally and sell it to another one of your home fans. Like, but you shouldn't have to tell people that, right? Like,
dude, the Cubs fans
Amateur
need
hour.
to take that stadium over. It needs to be 3/4 Cubs fans. If you're a Cubs fan and you're out there and you have any amount of money that you can just get friends and family to help donate to get you into that stadium, every Cubs fan who can be there, who has the ability and the money to be able to pay for the tickets because they're expensive right now, go there and show Brewers fans what real fans are like.
I mean, this is a team that, right? Pat Murphy said after game 1, like, they made it feel like a home game. Well, Pat, it was a home game. Like, if you have to compliment your own home fans on making your home park feel like a home park, that tells me something. And you saw it. Like, the crowd last night absolutely provided energy to the Cubs. It was electric. You know, people who were there were saying, you know, it's top 5 Wrigley postseason moment all time, maybe top 2 or 3 with the energy at least, right? And that definitely played a role. It can do so again, and it's the same thing. It's like, I wrote about it today about the crowd. It reminded me kind of the way the Cubs are playing is like Rocky IV or like any underdog sports movie, right? They get beat up for a long time, then they somehow manage to rise and kind of start swinging again. And it's similar. Like, if you remember in Rocky IV, what happened late there, right? They're in Moscow, and the Russian crowd starts cheering for Rocky, and then the tide can turn.
Is that what's going to happen? The Brewers, Brewers fans are going to start cheering for the Cubs.
Not so much that, but if there's enough Cubs fans there, right, then they make the place feel like it's. And so if you are a Brewers fan, or if you're a Brewers player, and in your own home ballpark, and it's certainly, they're a lot better about it now than they were, 10 years ago when they weren't nearly as good. And it would seriously, like, Cubs fans would fill 3/4 of the place. And, but even if it's 30%, 40%, those Cubs fans are going to be very raucous. And I think that's going to contribute. I mean, it's going to be like all bets are off at this point, right? I mean, it felt like that game 2 felt like crap. As soon as Andrew Vaughn hit that 3-run homer, like, the switch flipped. It was like, oh God, this is going to be bad. Right. And now, like, that's all gone. Everything from game 1 felt awful after the first inning, right? That's gone. Game 2, gone. Now you're rolling in there, not only tying the series, but having a shutout victory, hitting a bunch of home runs. So the bats are going again. They also, right. And here's the other thing. This is the thing. I had written about it yesterday morning. I was like, they have to score more. They can't just score in the first inning, right? Their only runs in game 2 came from that 3-run homer. Their only runs in game 3 came in the first inning. Bush hit the solo shot, and then they had 2 more solo homers, but only 2 runs across 3 games, 2 runs after the first inning. Last night, they kept playing add-on. Last night, they also had a double steal. You know how many steals they had in the previous 6 postseason games combined? 1. 1 steal in 6 games. They had 2 on a single play. And that pressed the action, right? It put runners in scoring position. And then you get to Shaw hit, and it's like, oh my God, this is the Cubs played last night. They took it to the Brewers. And that was the whole point. Like, a lot of people are like, I don't care when they score, they just need to score more runs. I'm like, yeah, no, I get it. That's obviously, you could score 10 runs in the first and the game's over. It's fine. But the point is more that they seem content. And this was even the case against the Padres. And it's not like you can score at will, but there is a difference. It felt like they would jump out ahead a little bit, and John left. I'm talking to myself. That's fine. But
no, I'm here. I'm here still.
Okay. Just
I'm mixing it up.
Like, jumped around. And so the difference to me is that they would get out in front and then just be willing to sit back and kind of then let the game play them. And last night, what we saw was they kept press. They were taking more pitches. They're getting aggressive on the bases. They're continuing to push the action and force the Brewers to beat them, right? That's the difference between what I saw last night and what we've seen in most of the rest of the games, truly throughout the entire postseason.
Well, and that's something that we talked about too in the last episode where it was like the Cubs were sitting back and they were just kind of reacting instead of like being proactive and forcing the action. And so they did a very good job of that. One thing I did want to mention is that you go back to the last time the Cubs had to win 3 games in a row to win a series, which was in the 2016 World Series, which the Cubs won, by the way. Look, got my shirt on to remind people. These games have felt very, very similar because, in the game in which it was the first elimination game in this series, it was game 3. It was very close, dicey, and the Cubs won. And in going back to 2016, same thing, right? Javier Baez solo home run. It was 1-0. Going into no, that wasn't Javier Baez. It was Chris Bryant.
No, yeah,
Bryant.
I'm
thinking of the Giants.
Probably thinking game 1. Yeah, the Giants series. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was a very close, tight game, right? And then that next game, the Cubs blew them out. And that's exactly what just happened. And so going into this final game, I mean, if history is to repeat itself, and I mean, we should expect this, right? This is probably going to be a pretty close game. I fully expect that. I think everybody on both sides is expecting that. And that's where it's like 1 home run, expect that to be the difference. And so, and that's where when you look at Imanaga and again, going back to this is to say, there's just no way. Like, I just think like everyone's just going to like explode if that happens. And so what do you think? Let me just throw that out there. What do you think the odds are that Imanaga starts game 5?
I think it's pretty strong. I think
really?
The odds are strong. Yeah. Because we've seen this. We've seen it from Counsell twice already. There were games when it didn't feel like he should have. But he has chosen to, and even Boyd, right? A lot of people were questioning, and I was a little bit. I felt a lot better about it. Again, being a home game because of how well Boyd has pitched at Wrigley versus and how I broke it down in the lineup post yesterday. Freddie Peralta was much worse on the road, has been much worse on the road this season, and actually on the road against righties that's his worst split. And so granted, Hap's a lefty when he hit the home run, but what we've seen from Counsell is that he is very much willing to ride or die with his quote unquote best pitchers. Now, I say that Imanaga is a best pitcher in concept only at this point. Right now, his best available pitcher is Colin Ray. So if you want to roll with your best, that's who it would be. But it feels as if he's going based on this is where I feel like it's that playing not to lose kind of thing. And that's by which I mean, like, you're still out there. It's like the prevent defense or whatever, right? And the only thing that does is prevent you from winning is the joke that people will tell, right? But it feels like he's doing that because if you get cute and fail there, then the questions are going to be greater. But to me, that's not what this is. It's not as if Imanaga is pitching really well and you're choosing to get cute in another fashion.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Which would have been the case. Like, that would have been the case for the Brewers if they had not started Peralta. Like, that would have been dumb by not starting it. It didn't work, but he was the obvious choice. In this case, to me, if Imanaga doesn't work, then that's like beating your head against the wall and then wondering why you have a headache. You know what I mean? It's like it's buying some Brewers fan like bought a $14 coffee at Wrigley and took a picture and shared it on X and was bitching about it. Like, first of all, either don't buy the $14 coffee if it's so freaking expensive, or maybe don't just put out like engagement porn because you're being an idiot. You know what I mean? Don't do the stupid thing. If everyone else thinks this is stupid, you're not smart for thinking otherwise. And that's what I'm worried about.
So who do the Brewers throw out there? I mean, are they going to do another bullpen game? I mean, who? Like Aaron Ashby?
Well, Ashby's already like he opened the 1 through 2 innings. He pitched a couple innings last night too, right? I know he pitched at least. My guess is they go with either Mizorowski as an opener, or they use an opener and then have Mizorowski because he pitched 3 innings, I think, the last time.
That's just so risky because he gets in there and he starts walking batters.
If all they did against him when he had pitched, if all they had done was leave their bats on their shoulders, I think they actually get to him, because but now he dotted a few that were just incredible, but by and large, he got by on chase, right? He got them to chase it a bunch. He got a couple calls in there too, and the umpiring's been spotty at best. But
last night wasn't great either.
Yeah,
especially for the Brewers.
Yeah, it was. There were
had some really bad
rough
calls.
Yeah, and that's disappointing. But I mean, again, when you're throwing 104, I can understand how maybe that might be difficult to adjudicate. But I mean, it seems because who went? Ashby went game 2, right?
Yeah.
Ashby to Mizorowski, and they had, I know like McGill didn't look real good last night. They had to lean on some of their high leverage guys. So they used Patrick again last night. I suppose they could run Quinn Priester back out there, since he only gave him 2/3 of an inning. Quintana? But he pitched. Did he pitch last night, or was that the night before?
Yeah, it seemed like everyone pitched last night, but
like they've used the last couple games, they've had to use a bunch of pitchers, right? So and they're blending together in my mind, and those were back-to-back games. Now they get a day off in between, so my thought is they're just going to be all hands on deck. Yeah, it was not last night. It was the night before. It was Wednesday that Quintana pitched. So I mean, it seems to me, right? Yeah. So I'm looking at it again. Ashby went couple the game before. He went 1.1. Last night, he only threw 32 pitches, but I mean, hell, even Peralta's not completely ruled out, right? Because we saw Matt Boyd getting up in the bullpen in game 3 of the wild card series after having started game 1. So, and that we're talking 2 days later. So I think Murphy will go out there and I don't think he'll be afraid to use 9 or 10 pitchers if he has to and go an inning apiece.
No, of course not.
Do matchups, but I'm interested to see how that'll be. Part of that is totally dependent upon, of course, if you have to use that many pitchers, it's probably not a good sign for you. But yeah,
and that's kind of where I'm at. Like, if you're looking forward to the NLCS, like it feels to me like the Brewers, they have no pitching really, right? I mean, it's decimated. They have, going to the point that we're making, right? Where it's like, who do they start? Who do they play? Everyone's played so much. Doesn't feel like they have really any good options. And going up against the Dodgers, that is not where you want to be. I really feel like the Cubs will be a better matchup for the Dodgers than the Brewers will be, just solely based on starting pitching and just the bullpen, just everything.
Yeah, I mean, not having Brandon Woodruff is a huge, huge disadvantage for the Brewers, and they haven't. I know they're still trying to play that close to the vest and everything, but it certainly doesn't, like with a lat strain like that he's got. Like that's generally not the kind of thing that clears up in just a couple weeks. I mean, I'm doubtful he'll be able to be activated for the postseason at all. It's certainly. He was super dejected about it. I mean, obviously, just even missing anything, even the end of the season, even the first series. But that really, really hurts them, because they have, like, Chad Patrick has pitched really, really well. Quinn Priester has pitched really well for the most part. But if you're relying on inexperienced young pitchers when it comes to this point in the season, I say, as I just talked about, Cade Horton being the Cubs' best option, but when it's literally like Freddie Peralta and then kind of an untested cast of characters, all of whom can be very good, like Mizorowski, like I said, but he's very mercurial in the idea that, like, he could be super, super stoked about taking the ball himself to first base and getting the out to end the inning, but he could also just fall apart and start spraying the ball all over the place. So I don't know, but this is going to be like we haven't. I have not been nervous or anxious or anything about any game thus far this postseason. Like I haven't felt, part of it's age and experience, right? But I mean, you think about like the wild card game in 2015 against the Pirates, like that was as amped as I had been for a ball game, since '98 when they had the play-in game against the Giants, right? Like I could barely even stay inside my own skin. That was because that was like a Monday night, right? I think in
well, and
98.
you had Jake Arrieta on the hill. I mean, like you were feeling pretty good about that, right?
For that one. Well, I was thinking back to the other one. I was much younger, right? 1998. I was, this is like literally a lifetime ago. But this is a different animal now because these first few have been kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. The Padres ones, they felt like game 3 against the Padres. Maybe it's because it was such an early game, and it was just like, okay, I think they'll be fine, didn't feel particularly excited about any of these games so far. Just kind of it is what it is. But now it's like, hey, game 5, and I'll be honest, a huge part of it is because our social media has been flooded for literally months now because we've been talking about the Brewers, but specifically for the last week or so, actually a couple weeks, because they have really been coming after us, right? For the takes about, you and I were talking about how mathematically the Cubs still could have caught them, right? And they were very, very vociferous in reminding us that the Brewers had won the division, which is fine. It's true. You should be proud of that. That's good. But they've really been hammering us the last few days because the Cubs were down 0-2. And so when it comes to bragging rights and when it comes to wanting the Cubs to win for more than just them winning, when it comes to the potential for us to point to the scoreboard, I am very excited about that possibility. And at the same time, like, it'll suck if they lose, but you know what? I don't have to go on there and deal with the social media. Like, I'm just not going to reply to anybody. I have that ability. Like, I'm mature enough, finally, in my approaching my late 40s, to just not engage with those folks if I don't want to, if it's going to be disingenuous. But it will feel good, like Thanos at the end of Endgame when he's sitting there talking about how he's destroyed like millions of worlds before this. It was never personal. He was like, but this time I'm going to enjoy it. And he's like, I'm going to enjoy this one. And that's like how I feel here. Like if it would have been any other opponent, like, okay, good on you. Good luck next time. I'm going to feel really, really good if they manage to win this one. And there may or may not be some bear poking with our Facebook account in particular when it comes to that, because it's pretty obvious at this point that the algorithm is serving this up to a whole lot of Brewers fans who just can't help themselves but comment. So,
and Brewers fans are, as much as they are fans of their own team, they are almost equally against the Cubs. Like that, it's very close how much they dislike the Cubs compared to how much they actually like their own team. Like I think if there were anti-fans, that's where they fit into. And it's just it's funny. It's hilarious, and we welcome all the Brewers fans to come and talk all the trash you want. And you're right. I mean, like this series is big because it's a pretty heated rivalry the last several years, and the Brewers have had the better of it. They have had this. They have been the team that's won the division, but they haven't been able to win a World Series. The Cubs steal their coach. The Brewers do better than they've ever done. I think they had set a franchise record for wins in a season this year, which is completely unexpected and shocking. And there's no one who would have guessed that. And, they went on a couple of very, very intense 10+ run winning streaks. I mean, they've done everything this year except get to the NLCS. And so for the Cubs to be in their way, this just seems very appropriate way for one of these two teams to end their season and one of these two teams to go to the NLCS.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think, I know you said the Cubs probably have a better chance, and I think I agree with you there. But the Dodgers, despite the fact, and I thought the Phillies were going to beat the Dodgers. Obviously, that didn't happen, and certainly
Phillies
just
beat
kind of
themselves
wild,
last night.
yeah, kind of a wild way for that one to end. But like the Dodgers, by no means steamrolled that series. And they have not been playing as well as what people expected of them, right? They didn't do great down the stretch either. And as much as they're loaded with talent and the names are huge, I don't see them as this huge juggernaut to have to figure out a way to overcome. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, and I'm not saying, if the Cubs or Brewers, whoever wins, is going to beat the Dodgers. I'm not saying that. I think the odds would still be stacked against either of these teams, if we're being honest. But this is huge, and again, like there's so much pressure in this, and I do wonder, for as much as people will lament this, whether it be individual players like Happ or Tucker, whether it's Craig Counsell as a manager. I do think having that even keel and not being emotionally kind of swayed, the temperature doesn't change much one way or the other. I do think that plays to the Cubs' favor in this. And Pat Murphy talked about it. Like the crowd got in their heads a little bit last night. They've got a young team. They've got some guys who are kind of emotionally invested in that way. And who knows, And that, again, maybe that fuels them more on Saturday, and maybe they just come out and blow the Cubs' doors off like they did in the first two games in Milwaukee. But I'm with you. I think this is going to be a really tight game. I don't know about back and forth so much, but I do think it's it is win or go home. It is going to be short leashes and pitching changes and pinch hitters and trying to leverage everything you can. So I'm excited for Saturday night. Yeah, I mean it's going to be. It's going to be something, but the last thing I'll say, because there was a comment on there, I commented back on it, but Javier Assad's not on the roster. I don't know, a lot of people, like, he hadn't been on the roster for either of the series so far. And I want to address that, because a lot of people are like, how could he not be? He's done fairly well in terms of what's asked of him, but the one area in which the Cubs have such a severe lack is they just don't miss bats, dude. They do not get strikeouts like these other teams do. We've seen that with the Brewers, right? The Brewers they're just rolling dudes out of the bullpen. The Padres, same way, right? So Mason Miller and Suarez and a few other guys, Morahone, like all of them throw upper 90s into the hundreds, and they strike guys out regularly. We've seen that with the Brewers. The Cubs, on the other hand, they got a couple of guys who can get some strikeouts, but Javier Assad does not miss bats. You cannot go in against a team like the Brewers in the postseason and have a dude who can't strike batters out, right? Like it just doesn't play. That won't work. He'd be fine for little spot starts in the regular season. That's who he is. But he ain't getting you success in the postseason right now with the way he pitches. It's just not going to work. So that's why he's not on the roster. But a lot of people keep wondering why he's not playing. It's like, well, he can't. He's on the taxi squad. So.
Yeah. Ben Brown ain't going on the IL to bring Javier Assad onto the roster.
No, that's for damn sure.
I so bad. I want that to happen. Whether Cade Horton starts or not, I want him to be on the Game 5 roster just to watch the Brewers world, like, minds get blown completely. They will freak out.
Well, if nothing else, like if you're sitting there saying, hey, you know what, for this one game, we don't need, like, you could figure out a way to act and then not even pitch him, right?
Exactly.
Because then it's like, like,
what are we going to do?
You get him up to warm up and just like the whole, we're going to start a lefty swinging in the on deck circle, but then he hasn't been announced yet. So we're going to pull him back after you change your pitcher over to a left-handed pitcher, and we're going to swap for, you know what I mean? And it's the gamesmanship. And that's why, people are wondering who's going to start. That's why we're asking ourselves this. What they didn't announce yesterday's starters until, we heard reports of Boyd first, and then they didn't announce Peralta till later. And again, that's the day of the game. So we're sitting here on Friday afternoon or morning, depending on where you are, talking about this matchup. It's not going to be announced for probably another 24 hours, maybe more. right? Because they want as little runway as possible for their opponents to game plan for that. You know what I mean? And that's part of the reason you use an opener at times. That's why you're flipping. And whoever either team starts, I highly doubt is going to be meant to eat a ton of innings unless they are just absolutely cruising, right? Like they're going to be the shortest hook. Like, oh, you walk the dude and now there's a bad matchup coming up. All right, you're done. You know, you're not seeing dudes a second time. So I'm with everybody else in wondering who it's going to be. And I just hope, I still have a strong suspicion that it'll be Imanaga, but I'm going to keep hope alive that it won't be until such time as we find out for sure.
But as fans on both sides, this is what you live for. This is the moment you live for. Game 5 against a rival. There's questions everywhere. You just don't know, but you do know one thing, and that is there will be a deciding game 5. And it's just exciting. This is why we do this show. This is why we have a blog. This is why we do everything we do in terms of traveling and going to see the Cubs, and just, the years and years that we all fans put into their teams is for this moment. So, enjoy it, right? Like, let's just embrace it and enjoy it. And obviously hope our team wins. That said, how can you not love it? Right.
Yeah. The problem, and like I said, my worst, I think I talked about this I hate losing more than I love winning. And so situations like this just really, really rile me up for that reason, because I'm just like, I can't feel good about it, until it's done. Right. Because I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And that's, a personality flaw, I suppose, when it comes to that. And so I'm not comfortable until the game is, even if it's a bad result, right? Like, even if, I was pretty much over the game 1. I was, hey, first inning's over. I was like, cool, I can pay attention. We were at a scout day thing for my son anyway. So I was like, cool, I don't have to pay attention to this anymore. But but like you said, though, that's, you wouldn't feel that way either way, whether it's the excitement or the nerves or whatever. You wouldn't feel. I didn't give a crap about the Dodgers and Phillies, nor would I. If there's another game 5 between two other teams, I'll watch and I would be able to flip over to a cooking show in between innings and forget that the game was on. You know what I mean? Because I don't care. I'm not invested in any of that. So the fact that we are amped up for it on whatever level is a sign of, this is something I've been invested in for this long, long time, and something that I want so badly to happen and to go in my favor, our favor, whatever. That's what it's about. It's unfortunately, it's been way too few and far between for Cubs fans. Even late, even after it seemed like we were all going to be cheering this team on in the postseason every single year, now it's like, okay, well, we're sitting here 5 years removed from the last time. And really 2020 was like, that was just a fart in the wind, 2 games that played like crap, hardly scored anything. And so it's been a long, and so I would go 2017 is what this is, game 5, having to go back to Washington right after that crazy. And this is a little bit different because they had lost that game 4, and that was the rain and the delayed stuff and everything. And it was rough. But you remember in that one, like, they had to face Scherzer, and they got it over on him, and then they had to hang on barely for the win, and you're throwing guys out there, and was it Wade Davis? Is that who had to come in and just hold it down? It was just, this is most comparable to me to that, because this does not feel like the ascendant world champion 2016 team where I felt the whole time, I felt great about that. Like, they were down 3-1. I was like, all they got to do is win one game and then another game and then another game. It's not that big deal. This again feels like that 17 team where they got to scratch and claw a little bit. I'm super nervy about it, So I don't know, man. We'll see, but it's gonna be a long. What do we got? Like 28 hours somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be something, that's for sure. But I'm glad that's why I'm still rambling, because I can't keep it all together.
A 3-run home run in the first inning sure would feel good. I'll tell you that much.
Well,
make me
there's
feel
been two of them. That's what, of course, people got a little pissy with me because I tweeted that last night. I said, "There's no way the Cubs could lose after hitting a 3-run homer in the first inning, right?" Like,
hey, listen,
that didn't just happen.
the Cubs have scored in 6 games at Milwaukee this year. They've scored 33 runs, right? That's almost 6 runs a game.
Well,
And
it looks like
so,
they're humming,
that's
Guys are hitting.
they haven't had a problem scoring runs in Milwaukee and during the regular season at least. And so, and the bats seem to be coming together. I mean, you had Tucker got a home run last night. He's looked better. He's had some singles. He hasn't been crushing the ball, but the home run was definitely, a good sign. And Hap totally crushed that 3-run home run. My goodness, that was amazing. That was almost one of those Miguel Montero moments against the Dodgers, where it's just like the stadium just exploded when he hit that ball. And it was just like the moment was just like waiting, right? Hap was due. I mean, so many things. And so these guys, this order, this, offense for the Cubs, they're still due. I mean, they still can put up a lot more runs than they put up. I mean, they weren't great with runners in scoring position. They're 2 for 11 last night. It felt like they scored a lot of runs because they finally scored more than 3. But I mean, and so they put up 6, but they could have put up a lot more runs than that. And so there's a world in which the Cubs come out and just put up a big number tomorrow.
Yeah.
And obviously that makes you feel good. And in that case, I mean, so just to add this into the analysis that they're having, Craig Counsell and team are having right now, what if they think, our offense can go up and put up a bunch of runs, and because we know that can happen and it should happen, I don't feel bad about starting Shota Imanaga.
I mean, I think that could be a factor, right? I mean, you look at like they can score runs. You've got that, which I hate. It
could be like a 12 to 11 game,
right? Because again, that feels like exactly what I just said about the prevent defense. It feels like you're saying, "Hey, we'll be fine," or it's like, think about if we go back, I don't know how most. I think our audience trends a little bit older, but if you think about like the early Colts with Peyton Manning at quarterback before they had actually won yet, they didn't really do much to address their defense because like, we're scoring 30 points a game. All we got to do is hold the opponents to 29, and it's like, yeah, cool, but what about that off game? You know what I mean? Like, why not go out there and shore up that defense and then just make absolutely certain that you're beating everybody by 3 touchdowns? So that's why I fall on this. Where it's like, yeah, the offense been like, yeah, but you can't guarantee that. And barring a decided reversal from the last 2+ months of pitching, I don't trust Shota Imanaga to not give up 3+ runs. That's and with Homer, and that's the thing. It feels so much bigger and more dramatic if you went out there, even if they were all 3 solo shots, you give up 3 homers in 2 or 3 innings. That feels way bigger than like if some dude got a bunt single and then, then another single pushes in first and third, and then you get a sac fly, you get out of the inning. And then the next inning, you walk a guy and then a double scores him, and then you end it. And then, you know what I mean? And you give up 3 runs.
The home run is the ultimate momentum swinger.
Exactly. And that's the problem. And we saw that. That's what happened. He gave up that 3-run homer from Suzuki felt huge for like an inning, not even an inning, half an inning. And then it was immediately washed away. And so you felt all that air just let out of the balloon or a whoopee cushion because it had that fart noise going.
Yeah.
and that's what is so concerning to me is that you get the chance to bat first. I want to, you got to go out there and set them down and not let them come up and score first. Because last night, wasn't it the first time? Was that the first time the Brewers hadn't scored in the first inning or whatever? It's like or at least they had in most of the. They certainly did in the first couple games, and so that's the part that I'm just like, hey, just get those first. If they can score first, awesome. That's huge. But at the very least, the smallest thing you can do is like, don't let the Brewers score first. Right? Like that's the key. Like get a lead and then don't just give it up immediately. And that is the issue that I'm having with kind of the way they've been doing things, right? So that's what I was looking back on, because what was on because on Wednesday, the Brewers scored first. Yeah, so the Cubs scored first in the first two games because they batted first, but the Brewers had scored in the first inning all three of the first games. And so last night was the first time they didn't score in the first inning. And that, to me, after the Happ home run, that was so huge. The last thing you can afford to do is give back momentum, right? Once you gain it, you've got to keep it. And that's what, to me, is the most concerning thing about Imanaga, is because he's by far the most susceptible pitcher they have to an immediate reversal of fortune when it comes to those big hits. So, again, that horse is now it's now a tub of glue that I'm stirring with a stick. But
it's going to be interesting. Something else that's interesting is just looking ahead is okay. So we've got tonight, Game 5, Detroit at Seattle. Of course, I'll watch that, and then the NLCS. The ALCS starts on Sunday, but the NLCS starts on Monday in Game 2 of the ALCS. And so it'll be, one day in between. And if the Cubs win, the Cubs will be traveling to Los Angeles. And if the Brewers win, the Dodgers will be traveling to Milwaukee. And so that game, the time has not been announced yet, but that's the schedule. And that's what we're looking forward to. And so, man, this is it, baby. We'll circle back around. There's a lot to talk about. I think if the season continues, obviously there's going to be a lot to talk about. If the season doesn't continue, there will still be a lot to talk about, because I think there's a lot of positives that are happening right now for the Cubs when you look towards the future, and we can get into that in another episode. But yeah, let's do it.
Sounds good.
Cool. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Go Cubs. Hopefully we see you back here. We'd probably try to circle back before the NLCS if the Cubs win tomorrow. So let's hope. You should hope that you see us, even if you don't like seeing us. You should hope that you see
which is probably that's understandable. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, we're out. Thanks, guys.
I'll see you.